My name is Dr. Paul Hickey. I'm the CFO of StealthEnomics, and I'd like to welcome you to our Higher Ed CIO Series, episode number 4. And today we're going to talk about cloud computing. So here's a crazy story I had last week. I had to go to the library. Now, why is that crazy? Well, I'm working on a follow-up paper in my dissertation, and I had a particular resource I needed, but I couldn't get it online. So I had to go down, park, pay for parking, walk over to the library, talk to the librarian, figure out what floor it was on, go find the book. Book wasn't there. Found some other books, sat down at the table, took my notes because I didn't want to come back to the library again, finished everything, and went home. Well, why is that unusual? Before that, I completed an entire PhD dissertation, 3 articles, research, did online interviews via VTC, communicated with my committee, my advisor, journals, all from the cloud. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and bring in John Norris. John is the CIO of Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina. John has over 20 years of information technology and information services experience, and basically spends his day taking care of students, researchers, faculty, admin, and advisors. So, John, welcome to the program.
Hey, Paul, good to see you here today. I'm glad to be here. Good conversation, and I look forward to it.
All right. Well, hey, we're going to bring the energy today, right?
Absolutely. We're ready.
All right. So, by the way, congratulations on surviving new student orientation and everybody flooding into the campus for a new calendar year, a new academic year. So how did cloud computing impact that transition and that integration of new students?
Well, thanks a lot, Paul, for recognizing that when we start a new school year, oftentimes as exciting and as nerve-wracking as it is for the students and the parents, of course, who are bringing them and dropping them off.
By the way, I have a few friends who just dropped off freshmen, and let's say the moms were in tears.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from our point of view, as far as technology goes, we're also have some anxiety and some anxiousness as well, because the systems have not been stressed a lot over the past few months. And all of a sudden, okay, now everybody's coming back, and all the great plans we may have had, thought we had, testing we've done, now it's the real deal. It's go live time now. And invariably, there's always something that you just can't test. You can't simulate exactly the way somebody's going to try to use the technology. But we made it. We're in good shape. We didn't have any particular hiccups that we're aware of. Everything seemed to go well. And I think one of the things that helped us a lot was having the transparency. By moving a lot of more services to the cloud, we had a lot more transparency with what's going on with our system. So we were able to be proactive. I used to spend time, Paul, on days, weeks like this, waking up and looking at my phone to see who was calling me, because that was going to tell me where the issues were.
Okay.
This time I woke up, looked at my phone, didn't see any alerts from any of the systems, so I knew we were in good shape.
So wait, you're saying that somebody used to have to find the issue, then call you. Now the system is telling you automatically.
Yeah, and sometimes I think they relished in it, Paul. I think they look forward to pointing out some of the challenges there. As a matter of fact, just last summer, we had our new student orientation, new students coming in. First time students and parents ever being on the campus and whatnot. And of course, there was an internet outage. Had nothing to do with us, but of course, I get every single phone call. It was actually a cut down the line with Spectrum and whatnot, but it's just the point that it happened on the weekend. We were bringing in new students for orientation and whatnot, and that's what the students are coming there looking for. And parents want to know that systems are functioning and they can communicate with their students and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And simple systems that seem simple to us, the systems that make a difference, like the life and safety stuff that we saw up the road at Chapel Hill just the other day. Right. Those type of things have to be working when they need to be working, not just in a testing environment.
Yeah, and that's tragedies. And yeah, that's something, as an aside, for those of you watching this, we do have a campus safety episode that we did. So please go ahead and take a look at that as well. So incredibly important stuff. And it's amazing how everything ties in together.
It does. It does. It does. And the more types of applications and the more systems you can put in the cloud, from my point of view, I've been doing this a long time, Paul. The more at ease you have an enhanced sense of security and predictability and whatnot. You really know that these things are going to function as you expect, and you're not worried so much about the eventuality of systems failing at the wrong time.
So it makes me think of how things have evolved, especially over the last few years. So as you're looking at the preparedness of your cloud computing and the functionality and how it interacts with students and researchers, how has that changed over the last few years, and how do you see it changing over the next few?
Well, over the last few years, what I have noticed quite a bit is we spend a lot of time really trying to understand when our students are here on campus. We know exactly what's happening all the time, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to access, where the servers are, which servers are in different locations, how you get access to it. But increasingly, the world of higher education has become a online, on-ground hybrid combination. Increasingly, that is the case. And that's what students want. That's what students tend to want. And they want to be able to do this stuff anywhere, anytime, any place. Having stuff on premise, as we did just a few years ago, always made that a little bit more difficult because we had to control access. We had to have a gatekeeper to make sure this was the right people getting into the right systems. And it worked, but it became really cumbersome. With this new cloud environment, which we're increasingly going to, so much of that is so much easier to do from anywhere in the world. I remember having to tell some students years ago who were out of the country that, hey, I just can't let you into this system because I don't know what's on the back end, what you have on your end, and I can't control or protect any of that stuff. And
wait a minute, John, I'm a student. I'm paying tuition, and you're not going to let me in the system?
We weren't in a position at that point to do that. This is 5-6 years ago. But now with the cloud-based technology and the systems all being mature and very secure, this is an easy task for us. So there are no more boundaries anymore. And when the cloud allows that to happen, and we're talking all across the campus technologies, the cloud first is our initiative. We have to go cloud first. It just makes a lot of sense. And we get a lot more positives out of it, including, we don't even talk about this much, predictable monthly expenses. I'm not overly
Wait a minute, I'm the CFO. Of course I want predictable monthly expenses.
Absolutely. And I'm not really concerned with one of my systems bogging down or breaking down. I know that the cloud provider has some redundancy there, and they're going to be able to spin something up in a matter of seconds or moments to help me keep going, keep my systems going.
All right. Hey, one 30-second question, if I may, and then we're going to go ahead and bring in our expert from the vendor side. As you're looking at like strategies, what would you say would be the best strategy to implement cloud or to expand your cloud? 30 seconds.
Yeah. And well, we're a smaller school, so what we decided to do is do an incremental approach. So our strategy was to move things to the cloud that users were very familiar with, and they also wouldn't even notice that they've moved to the cloud. So we started out with something like Office 365, moving that to the cloud. And since our users were used to using things like Gmail and Yahoo accounts, they'd already been doing it. Now we're just doing it in a corporate setting and whatnot. Right. And then we worked on things that were going to keep us safe and secure, including our backup and our disaster recovery.
Okay. Next. All right, I got to stop you there.
Okay.
Everybody, I'm the time cop, so I got to keep an eye on the clock. John, can you stick around? Want to bring in Michael, and then we'll bring you back about 10 minutes?
I'll be here.
All right, thanks, John. I'd like to introduce Michael Thompson of Sky Data Vault. Michael has more than 20 years of professional experience working in IT and professional services industries, focusing on technology, business advisory service, and strategic planning, supporting Fortune 500 companies for multi-billion-dollar telecommunication providers, and basically accelerating the growth. And in Sky Data Vault, as a founder, basically offers fully managed cloud services that offer the backbone of building a robust business continuity plan. Backup as a service, disaster recovery as a service, infrastructure as a service. With that, Michael, welcome to the program.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you with a heads up that I'm going to come back in 10 minutes and give you the hook.
All right.
All right.
Bring it. All right, folks. So I appreciate everyone signing up today for this conversation about cloud. And what I wanted to do is kind of bring some real world experience over the last few months of what we've seen in the marketplace when we talk to customers like yourself or organizations like yourself that are trying to grapple with the changes that are happening in today's market. So a few of the topics that we're hearing most frequently over the last few months is regarding technical debt. And this is a fancy term for making an investment in physical hardware or an environment or infrastructure that is not able to keep pace with the current requirements or the evolving requirements of the organization. And I can appreciate John mentioning the elasticity, visibility, and transparency that is happening in his organization. And I think a lot of organizations are looking to do the same thing with their technical debt or infrastructure requirements. The other thing we're seeing a lot of is organizations speaking to the fact that the typical tenure for someone under 25 years old, they tend to stay in the organization for under 1.3 years. So it's a very high turnover within the organization. So not only finding qualified IT professionals, but keeping qualified IT professionals has been a challenge that we've been addressing with organizations throughout the US. The AI machine learning, I don't think you can get on an industry website without someone mentioning something about AI. And although there's not a magic bullet for how to address it, I think what this does is it addresses the fact that organizations need to constantly be aware of new technology and how to posture for that. In a lot of cases, the dissemination of information and the securing of the information goes hand in hand. And I think John referenced that as well as he talked about his topics that he was addressing on the top of this seminar here. The last but not least is one that was also touched on by Paul, which was budgets, right? When an organization makes an investment in a technology, whether it be hardware, virtual infrastructure, data center, that investment has to last a certain period of time. And when those requirements change drastically and the budget isn't there to address it, it causes a lot of friction for CIOs to find some way to address the changing environment with the budget constraints they're given. So just some options that we've seen folks come to us with and say, hey, can you help us with this? And I'm sure these are familiar topics that you're dealing with as well. So my point is you are not alone. But here's another thing that's really cool about my job is that not only get to work for a great company like Sky Data Vault and help out customers, but organizations come to us sometimes with some really cool ideas on ways to do what I call life hacks. And in this case, hack is a good term, where an organization is looking to maybe in some cases figure out a way to address some of those budget constraints by moving or migrating to a more transparent or consistent pricing model for way to run application services and the organization's mission critical applications. So in this case, we had an organization come to us and said, you know, we're using Office 365 right now for email, and I've got a large file server environment. Is there a way for me to start leveraging the OneDrive and SharePoint features of Office 365 for my users? And in this case, we were able to assist them with this process. And I would say that the biggest lesson learned, if you were to go down this process, is to not forget the user experience. John mentioned using cloud services for applications that folks were most typically using already today. And I think it's a great sounding board internally to deal with stakeholders to say, if we make this change, what's the user community or user experience going to be like? Because the last thing we want is unhappy users. The second piece of this is actually we had another engagement where the structure and the security for this type of migration from a file server into Office 365 wasn't the right look for the organization. And so in this case, we had a really interesting application where we could give them what we can call the file server in the cloud. But what we did is we gave them an application that was a web-based and app-based way to interface with that. So back to my original point about the user experience, if we're going to go down a different route, we want to make sure that we're addressing the user experience, and having an app-based or tablet-based application where they could access the data was ideal for this organization. So great real life examples of how customers have come to us or prospects have come to us and said, hey, listen, could we get some help understanding what our options are available in the marketplace today? Another hack that I'd like to share with you is when it comes to actual cloud migration. We have heard some organizations talk about stretching into the cloud. And I think John alluded to this a little bit as well when he started talking about how he started leveraging cloud migration. So looking at mission critical applications or applications that migrate well to the cloud first, and doing that in a process that makes sense for the university or the organization. If you're in a situation where you feel like you have to do what's called a forklift, you may want to take a pause on that and really think through what's involved with doing that kind of migration. If you're able to do it on a application-based model, you may see much better success because you get a proof of the concept as you go along the process. The other aspect that we've seen folks use is we call it sweating the existing assets. So if you're in a situation where you have large amounts of technical debt, you've got infrastructure in place today, using disaster recovery as a service as a way to migrate to the cloud is something that I've seen be effective for other folks as well. Putting in a rock solid DR and recovery that is tested on a frequent basis so that you have a high level of confidence in its ability, and then using that as a backstop to anything that might happen to a piece of physical or virtual hardware that's in an environment that may be expiring. So you're in a situation where you're not going to be necessarily lifting and shifting everything, but actually moving and migrating as the equipment or the infrastructure dictates it. The last hack that I wanted to share with everyone today is that finding time. As we addressed with the difficulty in finding qualified resources and keeping them on staff, it's very challenging to actually find the time to address some of these new technical requirements that are being addressed in the marketplace today, like AI and like how to secure, and as John mentioned, have access to data anytime, anywhere in the world. So what we've found very effective is working with organizations to address the applications or the areas of the business, in this case, the university, where putting time and effort into the day-to-day tasks are better suited towards looking at more forward-looking technology. So in some cases, working with an organization like StealthEnomics and addressing the right partner or provider to come in and take some of the workloads off of the IT staff allows that IT staff to go out and do the things that they need to get ahead of the technical requirements of the students and the faculty for the university. So just some hacks that I thought would be interesting to share with the team here today. Paul, I'm trying to keep it tight. I think I'm under 10 minutes, and I might even be able to give you back 30 seconds.
You are definitely under 10. So gold star there. Actually, that'll give us a little bit of more time for some Q&A. So can we bring John back in?
Yes.
Hey, wait a minute. Okay.
There we
They
go.
did it again, John. I'm on the bottom to hold up these two experts. You guys see this every single time, so I have to go ahead and point that out. But Michael, thank you so much. That was awesome, and gold star for keeping to the time. John, what did you hear that as a CIO made you lean forward?
Yeah, well, one of the things I did want to speak on that Michael addressed very early on was the bench of talent. You know, a few times we've had conversations, Paul. You asked me what keeps me up at night. A big part of that is knowing that we don't always have a talent pool to choose from of folks who want to work at a university and want to stay at a university for quite some time. For whatever reason, you know, a lot of young people like to move around a lot and like to, you know, dibble and dabble in a few different fields, but it takes some amount of time for people to really learn and understand these systems. So recognizing that we don't have the bench or the team on site all the time, you know, we do need to lean on service providers that do have the expertise today. You know, I can't afford to wait to train someone up to be able to manage system X or configure system Y. I really have to be able to do that on a continual basis and whatnot. So I have a good team, but, you know, the team fluctuates all the time, and you can't always find someone with the same skill and expertise of the person who's walking out the door to a different opportunity. So that was very important to hear. And a lot of times CIOs have to deal with that kind of thing independently. it's just not something that across the campus other leaders understand or can appreciate, because faculty members, when they come here, they tend to stay. People who work in some of the different offices, but it's not like that in IT. And that's a very important concept that we have to wrap our heads around as CIOs and IT leaders. And that's just part of the life we live, but a concept we have to adopt or lose talent and not necessarily be able to replace that talent immediately. Whatnot. So that was a big thing for me to hear. The other thing I think that Michael touched on, which I hadn't thought of so much, was, using that disaster recovery as a service as a way to leverage when individual on-premise systems or piece of technology may go down. That takes away a big worry factor, because you don't have to worry about, okay, I can get this replaced in 2 days or 4 days. If you have your disaster recovery set up correctly, as Mike was alluding to, you can just spin up something over here in the DRAS site and keep going as usual in a matter of moments or a couple of hours, as opposed to having downtime during important times of the year. But I did like that concept.
Thank you, John. Paul, if I could jump in as well.
Please.
So
nobody wants to hear me talk anyway, Mike.
or hear you sing, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Ow.
What I like to hear from John or anyone is that we really try and put a snooze button on the alarm, right? When something happens, the whole theory of DR is to make sure that it's like nothing ever happened. So the user community shouldn't experience an issue when an issue happens. And if you can do that and you have confidence, John, in the way you protect the systems and you test it, then there's no reason why you couldn't extend the life of some of the investments you have today, as long as you have a backstop that you've tested and you feel confident in. So I think too many times people are asking universities to spend money ahead of when they actually need to. But you need to make sure that you're doing the due diligence and the testing before you use it as your strategy for cloud migration.
Absolutely.
So how does the scalability pops into my head? I mean, if you're migrating to the cloud and maybe a small university that's looking at growing, or maybe it's testing it in a single department, how is that scalability, and how do you plan for that?
I'll take a swing at that, John, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts, because you're actually doing it. But I think one of the things that the cloud offers a university or any organization is the chance to not only have a way to test things fairly easily before you deploy it in mass. And the other thing is that it gives you elasticity. So John mentioned the number of students and faculty and parents that come to campus for a concentrated period of time, and then it scales back. And then it could be during the summer, it could scale back even more. But during high seasons, it's going to be consistent. You have the ability, if you do this right, to structure the environment so that you're paying just for what you need when you need it. And then you're able to scale when you need it without any lag time. And I think that's the place that people want to get to, is where they're consuming applications at a rate at which makes sense, and they're paying for it at a rate that makes sense. John, what are your thoughts?
No, that's absolutely right. We are still in a position where, budgets are constrained. We don't have unlimited access to all the resources, even that we had during the COVID time, when the federal government and the state government was trying to support, keeping the schools afloat and keeping the schools open and doing the things they normally do. And so we are looking for types of services that can have that elasticity, because we do understand the ebbs and flows of our calendar year, and we don't need the same level of resources month one that we may need in month 7. And so we have an ability, by leveraging the cloud versus hardware sitting here on-prem that we got to pay for whether we're using it or not. Oftentimes I've looked at some of the old servers, and we were using them at less than 15% capacity for many days out of the year and whatnot, which is, what you had to do. But being able to dial that up and down,
100% of the cost.
Absolutely. Being able to dial that up and down really makes sense. And most providers allow you to do that pretty easily and whatnot. Even the bigger ones, like Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud, allow you to do things like that as well. So makes a lot of sense, and that seems to be the direction we're headed in. And more importantly, our leadership, presidential leaders and chancellors, they understand this as well, that this is where technology is going, and we need to pay for it as a service. Use a service, pay for service, plan for services, and whatnot, as opposed to just having stuff sitting in the closet that's essentially going to be a paperweight at some point.
Yeah.
Actually, let me pull the financial string, the scalability there, but also how does it compare to replacing aging technology? If you were to say, you know what, for whatever reason, we're going to stay off the cloud, we're going to stay with our equipment that we have, we just have to buy new.
Well, Paul, let me just tell you in my experience and what we've done so far, there has been a net savings with each and everything we've moved to the cloud. Now, there has been some learning curve. There's been some time spent trying to make sure we really had a grasp on this. But the aging hardware replacement cost and the support model that goes with that aging hardware continues to go up. A company like Cisco that we did a lot of business with, it just seems like every year I'm looking for an increase in the service and support model of 10 to 15%. It just seemed like that was just the norm for me and whatnot. So even though something that may have started out pretty affordable, over time, the longer you have this stuff and it grows in complexity, it just costs you more and more and more and more. My financial offices area, they love the predictability of these service models. They really do love the predictability of it, and it makes for easier budgeting for me. I've even gone in recent months and showed a savings, which was, I was a hero for that day.
For that day, tomorrow.
For that day. The next day was a new day. No hero.
Exactly. Better service and some savings over budget. So it was a good deal.
Hey, I've got an eye on the clock. 30 seconds, and I mean it. Michael, 30 seconds. What's your closing thought?
My closing thought is going to dovetail off of what John just mentioned, which is when you're evaluating whether or not the cloud is the right destination or process in your evolution, is to look at all the associated costs with what you're doing today. The physical infrastructure, the power, the support contracts, maintenance, hardware, the talent that you need to have on site 24/7 to support that. It is an equation that has to factor in all of those variables, or else you lose it.
John, 30 seconds.
Yeah, as the technology in the cloud has matured, it's really starting to be about the relationship with those vendors. It's really about the SLAs and the expectations, both sides, that really make a difference. Because technology is going to work. We're at that point now where the technology is going to work. We just have to spend a lot of time making sure we understand all those things like the SLAs and what's going to happen and is the data protected and stuff like that. So this is actually a great time to be involved because, in my opinion, we need to be moving as much stuff to the cloud as possible.
Ding! I don't know if that was 30 seconds, but it was close enough. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making episode 4 a huge success. Michael Thompson, co-founder, Sky Data Vault. John Norris, CIO, JCSU University, our resident expert. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and enjoy the cloud. All right. So if you've enjoyed it, please, and I'm going to point to the wrong direction, go ahead and like us online. Please share it. Take a look at the other episodes. This is episode 4. It is a continuing series. Our upcoming event on the 12th will be Enhancing the Student Experience with special guest 5-9. And then we're going to have a surprise special guest on the 29th. Also, as always, if you're interested in a free cybersecurity threat assessment, please reach out. We'll be happy to look under the hood for you. With that, take care.